Most people in the world know the name Sarajevo because of a period of intense conflict, separation, and division. Your wife was killed here?
1994, 6:40, Croatian must finish, and the Serbian.
So your background, you didn't set out to be an
No.
ambassador for your country as a tourism
Absolutely
guide.
not.
How did you get here?
I was supposed to have a boring job. I was supposed to be a lawyer, so I was supposed to work with the people with problems, and I ended up working with people without the problems, or at least they forgot their problems. They came here to enjoy and to explore, educate themselves, anthropological education.
We spoke earlier, we talked a little bit about this concept of dark tourism. Can you tell me a little bit about what you mean when you say
Dark tourism, war-related tourism, any explanation, any part of the tourism that involves death can be perceived as dark tourism, in my own opinion.
Does it bother you that so much of people's interest in the country is dark, or is it something you accept as a reality?
That's actually something we were thinking about. We were asking ourselves, are we making profit on other people's misery? So we actually thought the best way to do this job is to do it the proper way. Give the proper information, be as objective as you can. And we honestly believe that these tours are not only about people enjoying themselves, it's actually educational tours.
Now, it's interesting, you're interpreting the war for people. You're answering their questions, you're helping them to understand and educate so they have a more informed idea of war. The reason I'm asking that is you're young. Your experience of the war, do you find that that is a beneficial thing, that you can see it more objectively?
For example, I like to use comparative method. You go to Auschwitz, you're going to visit the memorial, and the person who is holding the presentation never experienced Auschwitz. It doesn't make the presentation of that person less valuable. On the contrary, it actually means that person was educated about the subject. We have all the verdicts, we have personal experience, we have stories of our parents, colleagues, co-workers, and we wrapped that together and created one story. This story was not created in the first tour, trust me. We were creating this for more than 1 year. Every one of us put their part of it. And to answer your question, I actually do remember a lot of things about war. I choose not to share it all. I share few segments of it because, as I said, we want to be as objective as we can.
You talk about your experience with the war. Were you here?
So I was here at the beginning of the war. My father would not have me and my mother stay, so my mother stayed here. My father stayed here. Me and my mother left. I had no choice. I was 2 years old at the time, so I'm 29 now. We came back after the war, so basically I met my father after the war.
Was that common? Was that common that people would be separated so that they wouldn't know their children or they wouldn't know their parents?
So 4.3 million people were living in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Nowadays we have 3.5 million people. Just plain numbers will tell you that that was relatively common. It's also relatively common to come back, and again, a lot of people didn't come back. They found their life somewhere else.
How did you know your father when he came back? Did you feel like you knew him?
Yes, absolutely. My mother was actually a very smart lady when it comes to that. She would talk about my father every single day. So she created love towards my father through her stories.
Was everyone that lucky, or did you know, were there people here who
No.
they had to build those relationships again?
When I said my mother was smart, that doesn't mean that other lady or family member wasn't. Maybe they didn't think about it. Maybe the circumstances were the same. So my ex-girlfriend actually, that was an immigrant or a person in exile, a refugee. No, refugee would be the term. When they came back, she wouldn't touch her father. She wouldn't come close to him because he was a stranger to her. Those things happen as well.
So the war had lasting effects, effects that we don't think about. We tend to become, especially those of us on the outside, we think of the shooting, we think of the armistice date or the treaty, and we don't think about these things. But that was real life here, that you had to not just rebuild the buildings, but you had to rebuild relationships and trust. And
It might be not shown because you cannot have the whole tour, everything explanation. You need to cut the time. But I asked you, when did the consequences of the Second World War finish? And I am basically explaining they're still ongoing. And the current consequences of this war will be ongoing, and that they are ongoing, and God knows how many generations will have to pass since the consequences stop. The consequences that led to this war were centuries old. So they're ongoing, and they will always be ongoing.
you're situated in the heart of Sarajevo, in the old town, a place that was very close to the meeting of cultures. It was renowned for high levels of interracial marriage, for friendships, and for cooperation. And then this came apart, at least for a time, at the seams. Has some of that come back? Do you fear it will ever come back?
There are interesting stories about Sarajevo during the war, because Sarajevo has been cosmopolitan through the centuries. The neighbors that were a different nationality, different religion, would actually be close to each other. Again, I mentioned you that the general of the Bosnian army was actually a Serb. So he was not Bosniak, he was not Croat. Bosnian army was not only Bosniak army, so it was not created only on one nationality. It was many different nationalities that lived in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I said many different because there are not only 3 nationalities living in Bosnia, there are other nationalities coexisting here as well. So Sarajevo is not a good example. Sarajevo has been cosmopolitan and it continues to be cosmopolitan.
So would you say that the spirit of Sarajevo can't be held down?
You cannot take the spirit. You never can take the spirit from the people. We learned that from the Second World War.
Today we look to the future, and that future includes the green tourism, the beautiful waterfalls and the hikes and the nature, and understanding there is so much more than war. Do you worry? Do you worry that the time will come again when people forget what led them to animosity and war, and those seams will come again?
I don't worry. The war will never be forgotten. The atrocities that were committed here will never be forgotten. People will just need to... You need to continue living. Human beings need to live.
We were in Konitz yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and it's this amazingly peaceful place.
Yeah.
With the beautiful water and the bridge.
Exactly.
But it seems to me that at that time, no place could truly be peaceful, because even if the fighting wasn't there,
No.
your father is
Yeah.
fighting, or your family friends are fighting, or how much did you know of the war in Konitz then?
They know a lot of, because it was like from one side was Serbian people, and from another side of the river it was Croatian people. So it was they was in the middle, and it was a lot of fighting in around the mountains in Konitz.
Could you hear it?
Yeah,
Child?
of course. Yeah, I was like in front of the house, and the bullet just passing me.
As you said, maybe it's lucky that you're young because you don't know any different. This is just life.
Yeah.
You're not missing or mourning the life you had before, but when you look back, does it feel like your childhood was taken, it was stolen from you?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. Actually, that was my childhood taken, but yeah, that was the main thing I think, that my childhood was taken from them, but it's not just mine. There is a lot of more people.
So you moved back
Yeah.
to Sarajevo after the war,
Mm-hmm.
but it can't be normal to go to school, even if you're going to school in the daylight again,
Mm-hmm.
to have to step over or walk past a building that is
Yeah,
crushed.
destroyed. Yeah.
When you returned to Sarajevo, did you notice the children there were different? The children who had stayed, were they quieter? Were they?
There was quieter, especially who lost someone in the war, like sister, brother, father, mom, whatever, and it was much different to live there. You need to be careful with someone to talk what you're talking about with him. You never know what maybe he lost his sister. You cannot tell him something that if first you need to meet someone and what he passed in a war and everything. But like my house, actually everyone's house, where is my house, was destroyed in a war totally. So we rebuilt it slowly, and actually everything in Sarajevo was rebuilt slowly after the war, but now it's becoming more touristic place. Every year it's more and more in Sarajevo, tourists, and it's getting normal life 100%. There is no fighting, nothing, so it just can become normal life in Sarajevo now.
I am just a little bit older than you, and I think, you know, my childhood was going to the store with my friends and maybe a first date and shopping and going to university. What was it like to have those experiences, but in a place where war was just so recent? They were still rebuilding.
Yeah, it was rebuilding, but like I think you feel still after a little bit of the war, but not too much, because like I don't know, for myself I know that I was going to school and I also practiced the basketball 6 years, go high school, play basketball with my friends. That was nice actually, yeah. That was, we miss I think in a war when I was kid, yeah, because we didn't have too much time or space that we can go out or play or just stay in the house or in basement and be there.
Right now there is a trend where annually about 30,000 people are actually leaving the country. And it's not that young people are leaving the country.
And this is today. This is not the wartime.
This is the
this
present.
is today
this is
during
the
a time
present,
of peace.
This is the present time. This is the present time. So people with the families, people in their 40s, in their 50s, are leaving everything behind and going to seek for the better future.
Why?
Because they're tired. People are tired. The whole apathy is taking place here. It's just that people cannot, you know, we've been mentioning fighting the windmills, and people are just tired of that. So for them, probably that is the hardest part.
Do you think about leaving?
Yes. Yes, but I also, as much as I want to live, double as much I want to stay. Because I love this.